So I've come down to the Last Tuesday Society tonight, and I've wanted to come here for ages. You can see it behind me there, glowing in pink. And it's a Curiosity Museum based in East London, and it's run by artist Viktor Wynd. I hope I've pronounced that right. And it's full of some very unusual specimens, from mummified mermaids to fairy skeletons and six-legged lambs and many more things. So it's an absolute must-see for anyone interested in the paranormal or witchcraft. Let's go check it out. So welcome to the Last Tuesday Society, otherwise known as the Viktor Wynd Museum of Curiosities, Fine Art and National History, which is probably one of the weirdest museums that exists in London, full of all kinds of strange artifacts. Upstairs there's an absinthe and cocktail bar, as you'll see, adorned with many stuffed animals, taxidermy and a few two-headed skeletons. And then you come down these windy stairs to be in the museum. So the museum is very small and very packed. I knew it was going to be very small, which I actually thought might make it very quick to walk through, but there is so much in every cabinet that I actually could have probably stayed about 3 hours or more. So the first exhibits I was faced with when I got down the stairs was very synchronistic for me, because one of my friends was actually good friends with this guy, Sebastian Horsley. He was a very out there character who walked around Soho and was very known for some of his insane art projects. One of the craziest probably being that he went out to the Philippines and nailed himself to a cross for an art project. He refused all painkillers, and after he was nailed to the cross, he passed out. The footrest broke, and he only avoided a serious injury by being caught by onlookers. So there is a film and photos of the event, and these are the nails that are in this exhibition. I personally find that it makes it a lot more interesting when you know a little history to some of the displays. So I was very happy that I knew something about Sebastian before coming here, and now I've researched a few of the other things, I wouldn't mind coming back. That's probably the only area I wish this museum would improve on, because although there are some little captions with some things, there's not a lot of detail, and I would love to know more about some of these artifacts without having to guess. So Viktor, who curates this museum, has always been an avid collector of strange things since he was a child. He says all children do this, it's just that most children grow out of it, yet he never did. And he previously had a little shop of horrors that was also in Hackney, but he actually really hated selling things and losing them from his collection. So eventually he ran a crowdfunder campaign in 2014, and that allowed him to open this museum, which was perfect for him because he could collect and display without having to actually sell the items. He does claim all these things to be real. Obviously, you have to use your own discretion as to which have been pieced together and which are actually real artifacts. And some of the things we might never know. Not 1 inch of space is wasted in this place, and even the ceiling is covered in things. This is a woolly pig from 1932. So the museum had a lot of these cute but creepy shoebox sets, which had taxidermied animals in, and I loved Moltar. I think he was my favourite. Obviously based off Zoltar, the popular electronic fortune-telling machines. Some of them were really rather creative, and you could look at the details that you might miss at first glance. I also loved Dr. Love. I thought he was very cool because there was a lot of details in the bottles. Each came with its own little story as well, which was pinned on the ceiling. So there was quite a few haunted dolls in here. I'm not sure that I'd want to be here overnight on my own. Then there's this leg bone. It says Irish giant found in 1747. It's actually a woolly mammoth bone. And I think this was possibly one of the most interesting artifacts. It's a casket containing some of the original darkness Moses summoned to earth. I'd love to know a bit more about the history of that one. I'm not sure I'm entirely convinced. It doesn't even seem to have any lock on it, for a start. A bit risky if it really contains the original darkness. As you can see, quite a lot of the things didn't even have a note on as to what they were, and I did find this the most disappointing part of the museum because there was so many unusual, intriguing items here that I wanted to know what they are, and I wanted to know a little bit about their history. So that would be something I would really love to go back to. I don't know if Victor ever does tours, but I think having a guided tour around here would be the best. Then we have some botfly larvae on a horse's stomach in that jar. We have some conjoined piglets, along with a six-legged lamb below. And this other piglet is a piglet without a face. Victor seems to love collecting animals with multiple heads and limbs. Here is a two-headed lamb, and then you've got a three-legged and four-legged chicken. There's also a two-faced calf hidden around in this cabinet too at the bottom right. This one is a mummified child, and this is a magical stone which is believed to have belonged to a wise woman in Hoxton in the 17th century. And here we have some condoms and Viagra that was apparently used by the Rolling Stones, that was handed in by one of the cleaning maids of a hotel they were staying in. At the back there in the small casket, there's yet another casket containing some of the original darkness that Moses called down upon the earth. And this has to be the craziest exhibit in the whole museum. So apparently this is Kylie Minogue and Amy Winehouse's poo. Apparently verified by Victor himself. I'm not sure if I fully buy into that. But here it says that if you're a celebrity, depending on what list you are, you can get paid various amounts for donating your excrement to the museum. This is the Pamela Anderson and Paul Robson unification cake. It's Victoria's sponge and sugar icing, and apparently it's made by the same person that made Victor's wedding cake. It really reminds me of those photos of the creepy celebrity parties. I'll go no further. This is a collection of artifacts from birds that are now extinct. In the back you can see the bird mask, which is a mask that was worn for ceremonies when the dancer will become one with the bird spirit, moving and dancing as the spirit says. It's closely associated with the concepts of abundance and protection and is often used in ceremonies related to agriculture to help manifest large harvests. So this hair was from a lady called Iris Goodwin, who had survived the Titanic but unfortunately died of the Spanish influenza after. The Hanging Man was actually a self-portrait of Wynd. Created a show in Miami and it featured multiple self-portraits of him committing suicide in ever more ridiculous poses. It was entitled The Sorrows of Young Wynd, and apparently many of the people in Miami that saw the exhibition took it very seriously. So this is a sailor's wedding tackle, and as you'll notice it had a tattoo on it. So sailors were notoriously not the most faithful of husbands, and some wives would tattoo their names onto their husband's phallus as a mark of property ownership. However, not all marriages lasted, especially since the life expectancy was so low, or a sailor might return to find their wife had run away with somebody else. So it was relatively common that they would cross out the old name and put the new one below. Here are some fairy skeletons or fairy mummies. There's actually quite a few of these in the museum in different specimens, so there's obviously different species of fairies if these are real. I keep an open mind on everything myself, so we have this one and then this very, very tiny little fairy here. Note says that the mummified fairy was purchased by Victor from an elderly lady in County Connemara, who said she found it in a tin in her grandmother's attic. She did say she had seen some of these people in the 1920s and they were relatively common, but she's not seen or heard of them for over half a century, and she believes that they've either died out or they've gotten extremely good at hiding from humans. Here you can see Russell Brand's pubes. The ones like Russell Brand and Amy Winehouse I tend to believe more, because I can imagine they all mixed in the same circles and maybe they thought it was funny one night when they were high or drunk. I'm definitely more willing to believe those two than Kylie Minogue. Here's a school photo of Victor himself that he's put in the museum. He puts quite a lot of artifacts about himself in there. He's put his hair in there along with some other items. So one of the final major exhibits here is Pablo Escobar's gold-plated hippo skull. It hasn't been authenticated, but there is some debate as to whether it could be the real thing. And in the early 80s, Escobar did import exotic animals into Colombia, including elephants, giraffes and hippos. He built a zoo on his ranch and opened it to the public. So it is highly likely that he would have not only gotten hold of a hippo skull, but he is the kind of person that I'm sure would have covered it in gold. The zoo was confiscated in part of the surrender negotiations in 1991, and most of the animals were transported to other zoos around the world. But for some reason, the hippos were left behind, and they continue to thrive there today, multiplying more rapidly, in fact, than they do in Africa. So this was such a cool place and I definitely recommend visiting. What better time than now over Halloween to come down as well. So it seems to range between £4 and £10 to visit. We paid £4, which is an absolute bargain. They also advertised some really fun sounding workshops, from witchy candle making to scrying workshops and cocktail making, just to name a few.